Okay, and I'll start off. My name is Iman. I am an MS1. Our entire panel actually are MS1s. But at Dell, we start our rotations um, in June of our second year. So we actually are soon to have our full preclinical education under our belt. A bit about me, I went to school in Chicago at Northwestern. I graduated in 2018. I majored in neuroscience. I took a gap year where I basically just like worked at random retail jobs part time and scribed part time for a year. And then I am from Austin, home is here. And so I have the privilege of being able to live at home.
Okay, I can go next. My name is Fez. Some of you guys might actually know me. I went to UT. Yeah, so I know a few of you guys. I'm just scrolling through the names. So I went to UT, graduated in 2018. I studied BME, and yeah, I'm actually also from Austin. It's really nice having your family in the same city. Definitely a big stress reliever for sure. Yeah, also an MS1.
If you guys just joined, if you guys could just kind of introduce yourselves in the chat, maybe give us your year and your majors, just so the speakers know, kind of the audience that they're talking to. But yeah, anyone's free to kind of go.
All right. Hey, assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Umar Khan. I graduated from USF in Tampa. A bit about my background. I was born in Pakistan and I moved to the US in 2010. So I grew up in Tampa and then went to USF, graduated in 2018. And then I moved to Austin. And during my gap year, I worked as a scribe at Austin Heart Hospital. And now I'm here at Dell Med. And I'm really excited to be on here to hopefully provide some insight on the application process.
All right, so my name is Sophia. I'm also an MS1. I'm from Houston, and I definitely, I'm very jealous of everyone who lives in Austin because it's really nice to be able to be in the same city as your family during medical school. I majored in biomedical sciences in college, and I graduated in May, and 1 month later, I was in med school, so I didn't take a gap year. And yeah, like Iman said, we're just finishing our preclinical education right now.
Awesome, that's great. And to kind of set up what kind of really led you to medicine, can you just give us a little bit of information about, maybe why you were interested in the subject of medicine and, what you did that kind of led you to the subject of medicine?
That's a good question. I guess I can start. For me, it was at a really young age. As I mentioned, I grew up in Pakistan. So I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and in my family, there's a history of heart disease. So I saw close relatives pass away due to heart attacks. My grandma passed away and my uncle passed away due to heart attacks. And I grew up in a really small town. We didn't really have medicine or major hospitals near us that could come and provide healthcare on time. So that kind of triggered an interest of medicine at an early age. And even when my grandma was alive, I'd tell her, hey, inshallah, one day when I'm a doctor, I can treat you and hopefully you'll be able to walk again. But that was kind of a romanticized interest in medicine. But when I moved to the US, I really wanted to explore and see if this is something I really want to do because it's a lifelong commitment and you're in it for the long run. So yeah, I started shadowing physicians. I went to a high school with the Academy of Health Professions program and really fell in love with anatomy and physiology and science in general. And that solidified that, yeah, this is something I want to go into. And throughout college, had experiences shadowing and volunteering that kind of solidified that this is the path I wanted to take.
So I didn't have a lot of exposure to medicine growing up, but whenever I began choosing majors when I was applying to college, I liked, I like science. I was like, oh, let's be a bio major. And as I started volunteering in the hospital, I volunteered at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, and I also shadowed an anesthesiologist. So I got to see the surgical side and then the inpatient side. And I just really enjoyed being at the hospital. I loved watching the surgeries, and I knew I just wanted to like even though it was a long, career path, I knew I wanted to go into it because I couldn't picture myself in anything else.
I also echo that sentiment of like not being able to picture myself anywhere else. And one of my long-term goals is to practice abroad. And in undergrad, I was like thinking about what would most easily transition to being able to practice anywhere, whether in like a developing country or just in another Western country. And then I love people. I love interacting with people. And I think if I'm going to be practicing something the next 40, 50 years, I'd want to have a high level of feeling satisfied, but also interacting with people. But also I'm looking at everyone's majors, and everyone seems to have a science major. We have a public health major, but a lot of STEM. And I feel like in STEM, you're either wanting to go into research or wanting to go into healthcare. So I hope everyone already has a sense for what they want to pursue.
Yeah, so I decided on medicine probably kind of late. I mean, I guess not that late, but maybe later than a lot of people that are like natural science majors. So I was BME. I noticed there's one BME at least that I see. Saba, shout out. So yeah, no, I decided probably around like my second year that I wanted to. I was always in between either pursuing engineering and doing medicine, but then I like definitively made that choice like late during my second year. And I think what really drew me to that was, I think, two things. It was a combination of some organizations that I had joined during my first couple of years in college. And so that's one thing I would definitely recommend to people. Just, if you're undecided, or even if you are decided, just like explore as many different organizations, just opportunities as you can. It'll help you make that decision if you're undecided. And if you are decided, it will just give your application just a much more like well-rounded outlook. And in terms of, I guess, how I made that choice, I think it was pretty easy once I got into my like later engineering classes. I just realized like, okay, this stuff is really cool, but what I truly enjoy is like actually working with people. And with engineering, it's going to be like, okay, you're at a desk job, or you're doing like you're like a project manager, and that just didn't sound that cool to me. I think being a doctor, you get to be kind of your own boss, and I thought that was also really nice.
But not really.
That's true. It's fair.
Okay, awesome. I think everybody answered, right? Sorry, my brain's like scattered right now because I'm fasting. But I think with that, we can move on to the next question. So what's one thing, after joining medical school, you realized you didn't expect about medical school?
I'll start. I expected to have it a lot more under control than I do, and to like not be so consistently behind or disappointed in myself, or just like stressed about like nowhere near where I want to be. And I've had this conversation actually with another classmate of ours, where at every stage of your life, you have like teachers or mentors that are like, oh, this next stage is going to be really tough. You're in middle school and everyone's like, yeah, high school is going to be, we're preparing you for high school. And then high school, they say that about college. And then college, they say, but like, sometimes you get there and you're like, oh, this is not as bad. This is manageable. And that's been my experience. Like, yeah, undergrad was hard, but it was like different from high school, and it wasn't unmanageable. And I, for the most part, was kind of where I wanted to be. But this is I'm like so behind on everything. I can't remember as much as I want to. I'm like not as involved. And I thought I had good time management skills, but now I don't. Everything that I thought and I was confident about has like disintegrated. And then some of you are going to hear me and be like, yeah, that's just her, but I'll get there. And I always have everything under control. So that was what surprised me the most. I sound so full of myself right now, but that and also not knowing what I want to do. Everyone's like, you don't have to worry about it. But I feel like you always have a sense of, like in undergrad, I had a sense of, oh, I want to go into medicine, or I want to do something in healthcare. And maybe even high school, I had an idea that when I got to undergrad, that would clear up very quickly for me. I just didn't expect to feel this undecided. Like some days I wake up and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do neurosurgery. And some other days I'm like, yeah, cardiology is where it's at. Or this morning I was like, I think allergy, that's the lifestyle I want to go for. I don't know. I just expected everything to be a little easier than it is.
Okay, I'm going to give a little bit more of a positive take on things just to balance this out right now. I actually I guess before I came into medical school, I was thinking like, it's going to be really tough, get ready for the long haul, buckle down. This is going to be just a really bumpy ride. But then when I actually did get into medical school and started, I actually thought it was really fun. It was really enjoyable. Like there's so many new opportunities for you, and like very the opportunities are like, I guess at each stage of your life you get new opportunities, and those opportunities are more I guess they're larger, they require you to take on more responsibility, but they're also more, I guess, quote unquote fun. Depends on your definition of fun, but there's so much that you can do in medical school that you could never have done in college. And I think that's just exploring those opportunities, and meeting all of our classmates. Every one of our classmates are just such amazing people. It's honestly, I have so much fun every day. So this whole pandemic scenario kind of sucks, but at least I get to see a few of my classmates right now. No, but it's I've honestly really enjoyed it. If you enjoy, the material, if you enjoy learning about medicine, you are going to enjoy medical school. And then, it gets even better each year, right? Because as I think Iman said earlier, we have a 1-year preclinical curriculum. So we spend 1 year in the classroom and then 2 years in clinics. So we get to move into the clinics in June, actually, which is pretty soon, or I think July. Sorry. Yeah. So anyway, you're constantly doing something new. You're never stagnant, which I really, really enjoy. And yeah, the work is a bit, but honestly, it wasn't. Maybe I was expecting too much, but I think if you're gonna be behind, but I think you just kind of have to live with that. Yeah, I've learned to live with that because I was in engineering in undergrad, and I was just always behind. So maybe that's why. But anyway.
Yeah. By both Iman and Fez. To add on to what Fez said, I think one of the things that I really like about medical school and I didn't expect was the freedom that you have with what you can do with your time. Literally, it's up to you what you want to do. You can be really busy, or you can just have a normal balanced life. For me personally, I think kind of like Fez, I was expecting medical school to be really busy, like a lot of work. But since starting medical school, honestly, I feel like sometimes I'm doing less work in medical school compared to some of the heavy semesters I took in undergrad. And that just comes down to what you want to do. For example, if you're a first-year med student and you want to be involved in research and you want to do a lot of extracurricular activities, then you'll have a really busy schedule. But yeah, it is still possible to have a balanced life. Like Iman, I live at home with my family. I'm able to give time to my family. If I'm not being lazy, go to the gym. and still, do well in medical school. And I think it really comes down to how you balance yourself and how disciplined you are, and figuring out your strengths and weaknesses and working on those.
Sorry, I was muted. I don't really have anything else to add. I think everyone else summed it up pretty well.
Awesome. So now let's kind of move a little bit into sort of the application cycle and the whole process with that. Looking back, so the application cycle is obviously a very, very stressful time for a lot of people. And I know a lot of people are going through that sort of crazy process right now. So for those students, kind of looking back, what advice would you give yourself during the application cycle?
So there's two parts of your application cycle. You have the primary cycle, which is like the personal statement and your main application. And then you'll have the secondary, which is like every school has like 2 or 3 essays. And for me, I think looking back, I wish I had done those secondary like sooner, because it would like cause me a lot of stress. I was like, oh, I did it like really late. Like basically after I submitted my primary, I was like, I can take a break for like 2 weeks. But I would recommend everyone who is applying to, as soon as you finish, you send your primary, and even before it's verified, start working on the secondary prompt. Start from your favorite schools first, and then just keep on working down. There's like 11 in Texas that you have to do. And then the sooner you get all of that in, the sooner you can relax, and then you won't have to worry about sending your application in too late for interviews or anything.
Yeah, I think, Sophia, you made a really good point. I think it's important to submit your secondaries as soon as you can, especially like if you can submit it within ideal time that I've been told by a lot of advisors was 1 to 2 weeks, submit your secondary. And like Sophia said, if you submit your primary, even if you haven't gotten the secondary questions, you can go on websites like SDN, and people already have the questions that the school's secondary. So just look at those questions and start working on those from your most favorite to your least favorite school, like Sophia mentioned. And yeah, I was just gonna say, just to add on, for primary, I'd say submit it within the first 1 to 2 months, and secondary, your goal should be to submit the secondary in less than 2 weeks.
So I guess I want to cover like a different topic here in terms of the application cycle. I guess I feel like a lot of people like rush into applying. So I took a gap year, and I want to say that I just want to like kind of extol the greatness of gap years, because I really had fun during my gap year, and I think gap years are great. And it's not good for everybody maybe, but one of my biggest regrets actually was not taking another gap year, actually, because you can only do so much in one gap year. And I think there's a lot more opportunities to have like actual real life experiences if you take at least a couple. But in terms of just the application cycle, I would say get your secondaries in on time, and I don't really have much to actually say about the actual application cycle. I just wanted to talk about gap years because I wish I could take one more.
So just to add something I just remembered, for secondary applications, make sure like whatever you're writing, your responses, before you do that, go to the school's website and look at their mission and their values and what they want to see in their medical students. And when you write your essays, tailor them in a way that kind of targets their mission and the values of that medical school. So for example, for Dell, you'd want to think about like teamwork, collaboration, rethinking, innovation, and things like that. So you want to do that for every medical school. And one thing that really helped me a lot was create an Excel sheet of all the schools I applied to, and then write the status of my application. So if I've submitted the primary application, and then for secondaries, if I've submitted the application, I'd turn that box green, and if I've heard back, just kind of update that and keep track of what's going on.
Also, this is like a very broad question. There's a lot of other questions that could be asked. So if I would actually want you guys, whoever's applying right now, who is a relevant question about the application cycle, just like put it in the chat. Maybe we'll get to it later. Maybe we'll do it now. Like for example, how many of you are applying out of state? Like, is that something you're doing? I don't know how many. I applied out of state. I interviewed out of state. I was like totally planning on going out of state, but it's so much cheaper here. And also I got to be at home. So like that's a whole consideration. No one has replied, but I have nothing general to add to what's already been covered.
I think one thing I wanted to ask actually to Fez was, what was your gap year experience? Because I actually heard a little bit about it from a friend, and he was saying like you did all these like cool things, you went overseas. So could you just kind of tell us a little bit about, what you did in that gap year and why it was so influential for you?
Yeah, sure. So I think what made my gap year as great as it was that I really I got to do a lot of different things, which was one of my goals. So for the first half of my gap year, I worked at a biopharmaceutical company here in Austin, and then for the second half of my gap year, I actually traveled, and I felt like it wasn't traveling. Like I guess it was more so I traveled through this website. Actually, it's called Workaway. Workaway.info, I think, is the name of the website. And what it basically is it matches you with hosts who are looking for volunteers to do some sort of do whatever job. So, for example, I actually traveled to a few different countries, or yeah, so I traveled to like 5 different countries in total. But I did this workaway at 3. So I did a workaway in New Zealand, Indonesia, and Uganda. And basically what it entails is like you volunteer your time for maybe like 4 or 5 hours a day, and then like 5 days a week, or maybe it's like less. Some places it was like 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then you get free housing and free food there. And so I worked in New Zealand on this guy's sheep farm, like the middle of nowhere, which was actually turned out to be like one of the best experiences because I met like 10 other people doing the same thing, people that I would have never come across like at any point in my life, like just like the people that are so different from me, but I learned a lot from them. And then I worked in Indonesia as an English teacher, and then I also worked in Uganda as a lab tech. So it was just such a wide variety of things I did during that gap year that I think really made it fun and just got out of my comfort zone and really explored. And I think that was my goal because I really felt that during college I hadn't lived enough. I just hadn't done enough, seen enough to stick myself in, this like one way like trip to becoming a doctor. Because like, I mean, once you start medical school, you really are not going to be able to do things like that anymore. So yeah, that was kind of my rationale behind taking a gap year.
Awesome. Yeah. I think we actually have people starting to send some questions in. So if you guys want to get started on that, we can totally move to Q&A. But we have the first question from Timur, who asked, what do you recommend we do during this pandemic since we can't do research for shadow? I think it's a very relevant question for a lot of people right now.
So that really depends on what year Temur is. Is he currently applying to this cycle? Temur, are you currently applying this cycle, or are you planning on applying sometime in the future?
Hey man, assalamu alaikum. Yeah, like the goal was this cycle, but like all the MCATs got delayed. So I mean now I'm kind of just playing it by ear. And like the question is just based off of like what the TMDSAS website said. Like they were like, don't spend this time just sitting at home and not doing anything, like try to get involved in something. So I was like, and that's like what all the schools said. They didn't say what to get involved in or what you could even potentially get involved in. They're like, just do something. And I was like, all right, well, you can't really do much at home. So I was wondering if there was like anything that you guys knew about that we could get involved in.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So some of my friends who are in undergrad right now who are asking me the same question are currently involved in things. I know one of my friends who's a junior. He's volunteering for this COVID-19 hotline where they speak to people who have questions about how to deal with this or if they're struggling with something. And it's I think it's students who volunteer to pick up those calls and help them. So if I find more information about that, I can send you a link to the website. And I think Fez also has something to say.
Yeah, speaking to that actually, so UT does have a pretty large contact tracing initiative going on right now, and a lot of undergrads are actually involved. I honestly have no clue how to get involved in that as an undergrad, but I know that's happening, and I can put you, or I can actually, if you're interested, I can ask somebody that would know more. Let me know. Damon, are you interested? Are you interested in doing contacts tracing?
What does that like entail? Is that
So
like making phone calls and stuff?
yeah. So it would be it would require like so the shifts are like 6 hours long. So it's like each shift is gonna be like 6 hours. Like you have to like block out 6 hours of your day for like a shift. So it's gonna be like I think the shifts are 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then like 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then you can sign up for as many shifts as you want. And it requires like I think like a couple hours of training, and then yeah, you're gonna basically be calling. You're gonna both be calling contacts of confirmed COVID-19 cases to just like ask them about their symptoms and any and then if they're having symptoms, then you're gonna basically be like, okay, we need to schedule you for a test. You're gonna make sure they get scheduled for a test, and then just make sure that they're able to self-isolate, explain what that means, gather a list of people that they've been in contact with, so then we can continue that contacts tracing line. And then also you're going to be calling people that have been confirmed positive via tests to get their contacts and then add them to the list. And then so that, I mean, it's a little bit more than that, but that's basically it.
Also,
All right, man. Appreciate it.
oh, go ahead.
I was just saying thank you.
Yeah.
And if you're planning on applying this year, literally start writing your essays, your secondaries, anything you can write. The more time you have to draft it, the more time you have to set it aside and look at it later with a new set of eyes, the better it's going to be. The quality is going to be better. Also, there's like various online efforts, like for example, the Emergency Design Collective is a group based out of Stanford that one of our classmates actually shared with us, and you can just like go to their website, put in your information, what skills you can contribute, and they have a bunch of different projects. Like for example, they're partnering with a like the Stanford online education department to design and illustrate and take a bunch of COVID related lectures. COVID related lectures online and publish them. And so, for example, if you have any design background, that would be a team you'd be placed into. Yeah, thanks, Umer. They have a team of journalists that are publishing posts on their website. So I don't know what other opportunities there are, but I'm positive there are other COVID-related online opportunities that ultimately you just want something that looks good, that you can say, here's what I was spending my time on. The adcoms are then like fully convinced that you're a productive member of society.
All right, thank you.
There was a question earlier that someone sent to me about the gap year stuff. And I'll just go back to just in case, just so that your question doesn't get forgotten. But so basically, we talked about gap years earlier, and someone asked me how I plan not taking a gap year. And the way I did it was that like I took my MCAT after my second year, and then I ended up taking it again in the junior of my the winter of my junior year. And after I took my MCAT, then I just worried about cramming I wasn't good, but like I crammed all my hours in, or all the activities I've been doing previously. I just ramped up all my hours in order to get my application ready. And at the time of my end of my third year, I felt like I was ready, so I didn't want to take a gap year. And so yeah, just to give the other side of that.
So it looks like, so then any advice on writing / editing essays? I guess Iman talked to this a little bit too. I don't know if I actually used the UT resource located in the PCL. I forget what it's called, but they were pretty good. Yeah, the writing center, right? Yeah. I used them. I used my family. I used my friends that are good writers. I used yeah, that was about it. But I thought that they were really helpful. I don't know if they have. I don't know what like they're doing right now. Like if they're still available, like via Zoom or something to help out.
Well, I know
But
I know USF's writing studio offered online even when there wasn't a pandemic, so maybe UT also does that. You can check probably.
yeah, I mean, I would hope so. But that's how and I mean, yeah, I just worked on it. Like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like, it took me forever. I'm just a really slow writer too. But yeah, that took me so long to write my like primary application. So yeah, don't beat yourself up about it. If you have writer's block, just stop. Continue the next day. Don't try to force yourself through it. It's not going to work.
And once you write the first secondary application, the rest of them, they kind of ask similar questions. So I think it becomes easier as time goes on, as you write more and more secondary applications. But one thing I would recommend is download or buy a subscription for a month at least for Grammarly, because the last thing you want to do is submit your application with grammar mistakes to a medical school. And I thought that was really helpful for me personally.
And then one more thing, as you're writing the personal statement, be mindful that you're going to be writing at least 4 or 5 new essays. So try not to have everything like on your personal statement, because you want your secondaries, you want to have like a variety and like different experiences.
I really agree, Sophia. If one person is going to read your entire application, you do not want to be repetitive. In like, for example, the essays, never just list off what they're going to just see in the descriptions of the activities you have. Or because I've been looking at the essays of some friends I had that are now applying this cycle, and it's like the easiest thing to do, to say, here, I accomplished this thing, and I want to make sure you see that, and I want to remind you of it every time I get. But from an outcome perspective, I just read about this, groundbreaking volunteer experience, or like this one paper you published 4 different times. And then also, I feel like a lot of STEM majors have limited creative writing experience. I did, a lot of my friends do, especially since it's like, for us, we just needed 2 English or creative writing classes to like fulfill the requirement. It's like, oh, I did those 4 years ago, I don't remember anything. But when you, first of all, get everything down, all your thoughts down on paper, like don't stress about getting it perfect the first time through. That's how you get over writing block. Just write whatever comes to mind. But when you look at it again, keep in mind always be asking yourself after every paragraph you read, what thought am I trying to get across? Is the thought I'm trying to get across that I am really motivated, that I work really well in teams, that I am going to be really productive in research, and I'm going to add something to their institution? Because you do not want the goal of your essay to be, I'm telling them what I did. Because they're already going to surmise that from the other parts of your application. But as I feel like as pre-meds, that's like we just want to show the proof as opposed to show that the more like the emotions or the attributes. Like I want to get across that I am a really good team player.
Great point, Iman. To add on to what you really said, like you mentioned, it shouldn't be a list, but I think with your personal statement, what you should think of is trying to tell a story. You're telling your story of why you're going into medicine. So if including things from that list requires you to tell your story by including that in your personal statement as well, then yeah, do it if it helps you tell that story. But before you start your personal statement, one of the things that I did that helped me was go on to AMCAS and look for these core competencies that med schools look for. And I'll send a link in the chat. You can kind of look at what med schools are looking for and then tell your story in a way that kind of aligns with those values and shows that you've done things that show you have these values. And that'll kind of help you write the personal statement as well. And I'll say you're not going to write the perfect personal statement the first time. So just start writing, like do a throw up. For the first time, you'll throw up on the paper, and then slowly, like people will read it, edit, we'll go through the whole process. For me personally, it took me a month to come up with my personal statement, and I probably wrote like 6 or 7 drafts. So be patient.
It took you 1 month. It took me like 6 months.
Well, like 1 month of like focused writing.
Oh, okay. But I was actually going to add on to what you said about making it a story. I really liked what you said. It was good advice. And I think one way to do that is to tie your personal statement together. So stuff that you have in your body paragraphs, if you mention something in your intro, try to artistically just kind of, if that makes sense, you want to have a cohesive thing instead of like just A, B, and C. Tie everything together.
I actually have a nice like PDF packet of a bunch of sample personal statements from Rice students. I got it from a friend a while back when I was applying, and I can actually send that to you guys if you want. I guess maybe Miriam, you can send it out to people afterwards.
Yeah, I can post it on the Facebook page.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can do that. That'll be easy. I'll send it to you.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and I think personally, one of the strongest parts of my application was probably my personal statement as well, telling the whole story of like coming to a different country and all the experiences I've had. So if anyone wants to have a look at mine as an example, you could always message me and I'll send it to you.
Awesome. I think we have another kind of more personal question that someone wrote in the chat from Sahib, and he said, Salam, do you guys have any advice for staying positive during the whole process? In terms of classes, the MCAT, and applying?
Salam Sahib. I do, let's see. I think staying positive, yeah, it's a lot, especially right now. Wait, are you applying this cycle?
I'm sorry, I can't type that fast. I'm not.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, regardless, I mean, if you are, if you're not, I think it's definitely, I think the biggest thing is just like, take breaks and plan for it, right? Like if you know you're going to be applying during like this summer or whatever, plan for it by making sure that you're not over like burdening yourself with other activities during that same time. Like, you know yourselves the best. Nobody else knows you better than you know yourself. And so you know how much, how much you can handle, right? So just be aware of that and don't like overburden yourself, I guess. And maybe, even let your family and friends know, like, look, I'm applying right now, so I might not be as present as I normally am. And just take breaks and reward yourself for your hard work. Yeah, honestly, I'm like repeating a bunch of advice I've seen a lot of upperclassmen give our second years right now as they're preparing for STEP. It's a marathon, so and it's just, there's a lot of writing. So if you don't like writing, like, you just kind of have to suck it up and do it. I was one of those people. I hated writing. But honestly, I actually really enjoyed the application cycle because it forces you to really think and reflect on why you're applying to med school. And if anything, it really solidified my intentions of like going into medicine even more than they were before I applied.
Yeah, Fez, I think that's solid advice right there, especially with the point you made about the reflection. I think if so, there's a couple of things you can do, right? I think a lot of stress comes from uncertainty about what's going to happen and what you're supposed to do. So try to make a plan that kind of guides you and directs you as to what you're supposed to be doing nowadays to help you get to where you want to be in the future, inshallah. So creating that plan and then reflecting weekly. Are you making that progress? Are you doing the things you should be doing to get to that point? And that reflection will really help you assess your performance currently. As far as dealing with the stress and negativity, two things that really helped me when I was applying, because I was definitely stressed, and I think being a pre-med on the other side is extremely stressful. So I understand where you're coming from. So two things that helped me a lot. First is try to find time to get some cardio, like workout, whatever your hobby is. Do some kind of exercise. And I know I don't do any right now, but yeah, when I was going through that stressful time, I was doing a lot of exercise. And the second thing that helped me a lot was praying on time, making sure I'm doing all my 5 prayers, and that kind of reduced all the stress levels, and it kind of makes you realize that everything is up to Allah, and you can just do your best and leave it up to Allah.
Yeah, I want to share like a really quick personal story. I remember when I was applying, there was one night in July. I just freaked out because I was like, I made a mistake. I sent my things in too late, and I'm not gonna get any interviews. And I remember I think I made a dua that night, and I remember instantly just feeling better. So whenever you're just feeling overwhelmed, I mean, dua is always the first thing you should do.
I guess I feel like as the most cynical person of this group, I started off our talk on like a negative stress note. I am always stressed. Like, you think once one thing passes, that's, I just need to get in, and then that's it. I'll stop being stressed. Everything's going to be easier. Everyone said everything gets easier. And then you overcome the next hurdle, and then you're stressed again, and then you're always exhausted, and then you don't, like as Fez said, you don't see the fun in it, and it just becomes a chore because you're so focused on how things can go wrong or what you didn't do well enough. And for me, what helps, besides what everyone has shared, is like looking at the big picture and thinking, okay, next year, if I think back to, like, I'm freaking out right now and I'm crying, if I think back to this moment, am I gonna laugh at how trivial it was? And the answer is usually yes. And what also helps me is, like, if I'm stressed about, like, for example, if I was stressed about not getting interviews, then thinking about that and thinking about, okay, let's say I don't get interviews, so what? It's not the end of the world. What is my plan? Do I have thoughts about a backup plan? Do I have thoughts about what I would do? Which, because I think, like, if you can come up with alternatives and be able to tell yourself that no matter what happens, with Allah's help, I'll be able to get through it, then, I don't know, it's easier, it's less stressful.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys for that advice. We have another question from Amar Abed, who mentioned that he's applying the next cycle, so he still has a year to kind of get more hours. And he asked, what are y'all's thoughts on clinical volunteering and shadowing? And do you guys have any tips or things you've heard from other people?
In terms of shadowing, I think what's more important is, well, I mean, I don't know, maybe you guys can speak to this more than I can, but I've heard that breadth is like better than depth, at least in terms of shadowing as a pre-med. vary your experiences, but at the same time, so I guess like I've heard like various arbitrary cutoffs as like as to the amount of hours you need or you need to shadow as a pre-med undergrad. I personally had 40 hours. I have friends that had like hundreds of hours, and I have friends that had like 30 hours of shadowing and got into like an Ivy League school. So I think what shadowing is really meant to do in your application is just to show the schools that you know what you're getting yourself into. You know the lifestyle. You know the duties that you eventually will have to do. So as long if you can show that some other way, then even better. Just because shadowing it's not a I don't know I never really found it to be a very rewarding thing. Like it's cool, you get to see it, but you don't get to do anything. You're just like watching, right? So I think a lot of schools understand that too. So I mean, yeah, maybe other people can speak to this better than I can.
I think you made an important point. Shadowing isn't the most critical thing on your application. I mean, personally, I had a lot of trouble in undergrad getting anyone to like shadow because I didn't know any physicians, didn't have any relatives. I was like relatively new in the country. So, I mean, up until last semester of my undergrad, when I was applying to medical school, I only had like 30 hours of shadowing. And then I got a physician through a mentorship program to let me shadow him, and I got like 40 more hours. So I applied to medical school total with like 75 hours of shadowing. But then I had other clinical experiences like volunteering in the ER, and then I worked as a scribe. So one thing you can do on your applications also include what you're going to do in the future while your like application is ongoing. So if you're planning on working as a scribe or you're planning on getting more hours done, you can include that in your application. But as far as shadowing goes, I think it's just one component. If you've done it, it'll just show that, yeah, like you've explored a bit, that you're sure about going into medicine. And what's more important is what you learned from that shadowing experience and how you talk about it on your application rather than how many hundreds of hours you did.
Boomer, that's a great point. I don't think shadowing per se is important. It's like clinical hours. If I can say I've had this many hours in a clinical environment and I've seen exactly what a doctor is supposed to be doing, and I can articulate why, then I'm comfortable with all the other factors like the massive amount of busy work and paperwork that a doctor has to deal with, and I can articulate why I've seen the responsibilities and how the role of a physician differs from other people on the healthcare team. And so because that's ultimately what they want. They want you to shadow so they know that you're going to come to med school and you're not going to be like, I wish I was a PA. If I had known what I know now, I would go to PA school. And for me, I also had like a paltry amount I basically didn't shadow. But I scribed during my gap year, and then I did volunteer at the Rehab Institute. So I could convey the same goals or like lessons learned from shadowing through, either a job where I was going to get paid a little bit or volunteering, which then also ticked off the volunteering and service box. So I would say if you have people to shadow, great, do it. You'll see like different doctors. They'll give you more attention because when you're volunteering, no one is giving you that kind of attention. But if not, if you have trouble finding people, don't stress about it. Just get clinical hours, however, in whatever context you can.
That was great advice, guys. Thank you. We have another question from Sadaf, and I think after that we can take just a couple more. So while we're talking, feel free to send a question in the chat. But Sadaf is asking, do you guys have any preparation tips for the interview process? I'm sure you guys have a lot to say about that.
Yes, I think interviewing was one of my, I guess, strongest parts of my the whole process as well, because every school I interviewed at got back to me, and I think I give credit for that to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. Ryan. He's like a pre-med MD guy on Facebook and YouTube, but he has this book on interviews, tips for medical school interviews. And I read that book and just went through the sample examples he had. And then I applied what I learned in that book to my story and how I would articulate that at medical schools. And that helped me a lot. So medical schools have two different types of interviews. One's traditional, where they just ask you questions like, oh, why medicine? What's your strength? What's your weakness? And then Dell has MMIs, which are like ethical-based scenarios, where you read something on the like an ethical scenario, and you go in and articulate what you're going to do in the situation. And for that, I used a Wash U's ethics page on. So if you just search in Google Wash U ethics, the four different pillars of medical ethics will come up, and you can kind of go through those cases, and it'll help you get that foundational knowledge to do well on those MMIs. But so action items, I recommend buying Dr. Ryan's book for interview prep, and go to WashU for ethics, MMI related questions.
I didn't really start preparing for any interviews until after I got my first interview invite. And I think the advice I have is there's 5 basic questions that you have to have your answers down, like why medicine, strengths and weaknesses, and why this school. And I mean, just to, and those are the things I can think of off the top of my head. So have those, practice in front of a mirror, and also try to read up on healthcare issues. Like I remember my first interview with San Antonio. I had my whole why medicine down, everything, my application down, and like a second question was like, what is the biggest issue in healthcare and how do you fix it? And I was like, oh my God. But anyway, so that's a good thing to read up on before your interviews, but definitely, and also have questions prepared for the school. Because at the last 5 minutes of every interview, they'll tell you like, do you have any questions for me? And you got to have questions, because a lot of the times the questions are already answered in the whole like school like program. So you got to have specific questions for your interviewer, for the school, anything.
In terms of interview preparation, I think I just like, I think what Omar was saying earlier about like, you know, researching the school and their kind of their values is a really good idea. Other than that, just make sure you get a lot of like some good sleep, eat a good meal. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just gonna make sure you're in like the best possible state to impress somebody, really, look nice. Yeah.
Great. We have, or I guess, Sophia, you answered that one in the chat. If anyone else has any more questions, feel free to send them in. I think Thaymor was asking, how do we pitch a healthcare consulting internship in a positive light, which is a little bit more of a specific question. I think you guys kind of went over that. But yeah, if no one else has any more questions, we can kind of wrap up. If you guys have any last minute ones, feel free to just send them right now. But, you know, with that, I really want to thank you guys for, you know, giving us your time, you know, your time when especially you're really busy right now. And, you know, there's a lot going on right now. I know it's been really helpful for students. We have a couple more questions coming in. Okay. I think we can answer those 2 questions and then kind of wrap.
I'm fine with staying as I have from now till Melody.
Okay.
So if you guys have more questions, like I'm fine staying longer.
Okay.
You're only supposed to go till 7, but keep them coming.
Okay, cool. I think we have one question from Faria. How vital were internships in your opinions?
So that's a great question. And I think that could be applied to any experience you have during your undergrad that's helping you towards medical school. So, I mean, you don't necessarily need an internship to be competitive. Any kind of experience you've had that's gonna give you some kind of skills, that's gonna require you to work in a team and collaborate with other people. I think it's important to have those kind of experiences, whether it be an internship, a volunteering experience, a project you worked on. So it doesn't necessarily need to be an internship, and I didn't have any internships on my application. And rest, other people can speak to it as well.
Oh, I didn't realize I was still unmuted. I also did not have any internships. Like the closest I can think of is being in like formal research programs that were like summer programs that were funded, but that's just research. So I don't think internships had any effect. Like they would look cool, definitely. And you always want to look cool and stand out and be memorable.
Yeah, and I think what internship, I mean, I guess it depends like what the internship is, but I think it can add a little bit of like uniqueness to your application. I mean, I don't know, when I think of internships, I think of like business or engineering or something. But yeah, I don't know what major you are for you, but I mean, yeah, you know, if you intern at, you know, you're working at a company, I think that definitely adds uniqueness, and I think it gives you, I mean, if it's like a life science or healthcare company, then it gives you a unique perspective on that, I guess, whatever, you know, you're interning. Because I mean, it's so different from working in an academic lab. If you're working at an actual like company, everything is so different, and being able to talk about that, I think, is definitely going to be unique.
I think we have also a lot of underclassmen in the call right now. So based on Mahnur's question, you know, do you guys have any advice for underclassmen, you know, people just kind of starting out in college? What would you suggest that they do to kind of set themselves up to go to med school?
So I think one advice I have, oh, wait, Iman, were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna ask, can we hold off on that one moment? I got a question about mentioning going the MD route or DO rather than PA, and how you would articulate that. And because we do a lot of mixed interprofessional work, I thought this would be a good question to get everyone's thoughts on before we shift to underclassmen advice, if that's okay, Mariam.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. My biggest thoughts on this are, you want to articulate that you understand that, like for me at least, the biggest difference is in scope of practice and leadership and how much responsibility you want, and being able to say, I enjoy being a leader in the context of teamwork, because you don't want to come across as like just wanting to be a boss, and that you enjoy responsibility, and that you want to be like leading the ship, but backing that up with, here's a bunch of leadership work that I've done. Here is how I know that I like having a lot of responsibility. Here's other experiences where I have led the team, or like been in a position of leadership and been able to make those critical decisions and see them play out and take responsibility no matter the outcome. That's it.
Yeah, Iman, I think that was great advice. And this question you're probably going to get asked on your interviews, because I think I got asked this question almost at every single school. Like, why do you want to go into medicine? Why not PA, or why not become a nurse? And one thing you don't want to do is disrespect or degrade other professions. And I had an applicant who was on the interview trail who actually, because he was so nervous, he ended up degrading the other profession. And don't do that. Try to like come up with the answer to this before you go. And like Iman was saying, talk about first, like reiterate the point that yes, nurses are extremely important part of the team, PAs are extremely important part of the team. But as someone who really likes to be intellectually challenged and be at the forefront of solving issues, I think from the experiences I've had throughout undergrad, I would like to be the person at the forefront leading and solving these complex issues. So say something along those lines, and while still respecting the other professions.
Also, if you have a mission, if like I feel like for all of us, because we're at Dell, we had some part of this. Our mission is to transform healthcare. Our mission is to change the broken healthcare system in the United States and make sure that patients that need care are able to get care, and that we're focusing on treating patients instead of making as much money as possible. So I feel like we all had that mission, but if you are able to articulate a mission like that of wanting to be a change maker, then it falls into place that, well, who's going to be the change maker? It's the physician who's leading the healthcare team.
And if there's any people in the chat that are just trying to decide whether they want to do medicine or another career like NP or PA, I'd just say that, you know, they're all excellent professions. They all have advantages that, you know, that the others don't have, including advantages of PA over medicine, advantages of nursing over medicine. And I would just really think about, is it something you really want to do? And if you can't picture yourself in any other situation or any other school, and you know that you'd be unhappy in those other schools because they're not, you know, the school you desire, then don't worry about the difficulty or the length, because the time passes by. 10 years from now or 7 years from now, you'll still be in this, like the time will still pass so quickly. The only difference is whether you'll be doing something that you're happy with. And there's no shame also in like thinking about having doubts. I had a lot of doubts after my first semester. And then someone told me the same advice I'm giving you now, and then I never looked back since then.
Yeah, I think my peers said it best. I don't have anything else to add.
Awesome. So then we can kind of transition into the question Mahnur had. You know, what advice do you have for the underclassmen in this chat right now?
Yeah, if I could go back to my freshman year, what advice would I give myself? I'd say kind of what Fez was saying earlier. Try to explore opportunities that are offered at your institution. Get involved in anything and everything, especially during your first year, and try to figure out like what your interests are. And then as you progress through your undergrad, like second year, third year, then maybe narrow it down to a few organizations that you're really passionate about and interested in, and really get involved in those. As far as shadowing, I'd say like if you have the opportunity to shadow, I'd do that during first and second year so you can kind of get that out the way, and then focus more on research and other bigger things during third year, because by third year you're pretty sure you're going into medicine. You don't really need to shadow someone, like you're set on going into medicine. So if you could get that out of the way early on, I think that'd be really helpful.
Also, there's a certain point where, like, for example, you're 2 years in, you have a variety of experiences. You've been in like different clubs, and some of them are unrelated, or you've been doing like different extracurriculars. At that point, like at your halfway point, depending on how many gap years you take or how long you think before you'll start med school, then deliberately start adding activities or doing things that build upon your story. Like Umar and Sophia were talking about, you want to convey a story, and it's so much easier when you're able to say, here are these foundations that I laid my freshman and sophomore year, and then here's what I did my junior year that connected these. Like, for example, I did a lot of Arabic work. Like I spent a summer studying Arabic. I had a lot of Arabic classes. I did like Arabic translating, extracurricular volunteer work, and that was very unrelated. And so my third year, where I was trying to think about what my story is and how can I take all this time I spent on something I enjoy, but I'm going to have a hard time pitching to med schools to convince them this is going to make me a better doctor. Then I was looking for experiences where I could merge like my background in Arabic with healthcare. And that ended up being in the context of like Syrian refugee healthcare work. But it's obviously depends on what your background is. I feel like Fez, you must have had something because you're like engineering and medicine and being able to bring those together. But at one point, before you start applying, think about adding activities that bridge your interests or that bridge the things in your CV to make it cohesive. And then they're like, oh wow, this person has been thinking about how to connect all parts of their identity since their freshman year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really good advice. This whole story. Yeah, and then my advice would be, just don't rush. If you don't like, you never need to. But I feel like, especially, like our culture has made it so that I think we are like, we kind of feel like this inherent need to, just go through the whole process as fast as possible. But I'm here to say, take your time if you need it.
I 2000% agree with what Fez said. There are people at our med school who are like in their 30s and have kids, and I think it's after you, like when I was a pre-med, I wanted to get in as fast as I could. So it's after you get into med school and you see the other side, you realize you're like, why was I rushing? Like I could have taken a few years to chill. I could have done things that I really enjoyed or explored some more things. So I 100% agree with Fez's point. And Iman made some great points about like connecting your application. At the same time, I want to reiterate that I don't want you guys to stress out about like getting activities that'll help you bridge things. I think you can always bridge activities in how you articulate the experiences. So for example, like I played cricket in undergrad. I was in like a cricket team at USF. And how do you tie in cricket with medicine? Teamwork, hard work, collaboration. So bringing those values in and then tying it into medicine. So you don't necessarily need related activities. You can always tie in things.
Yeah, and I would say going off of this activity stress is, especially your freshman year, like especially first semester and before you're studying for MCAT, don't stress about getting hours. I think one of the reasons I took my MCAT twice was the very first time I was taking the summer, and I was like, this is the only opportunity I have to volunteer at the hospital with good experiences. So I was volunteering at the hospital the summer I was studying for the MCAT. But I learned later it's okay to push those in the back burner, like GPA, MCAT. Like it's not a death sentence if you have a low of either, but they're very important. They're like, I would say, the most important when it comes to interviews. And so treat those as your top two priorities, and then after that worry about the hours and the fluff and everything. Everything else will fall into place after your MCAT.
I agree. MCAT is priority. Like all my advice is useless.
Sorry. So someone asked a question earlier about what you could do as underclassmen. There's a website called jackbeston.com, and he sends you CARS passages daily. And CARS is one of the most important section on the MCAT that I hated with passion. So if you're a freshman or a sophomore, you can sign up for that website. It'll send you a CARS passage every morning, and you can start practicing that. And I think eventually by the time you take your MCAT, it'll pay off a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. We had one kind of more personal question. Why are you guys passionate about medicine?
Ooh, throwback to our application cycle. Why am I passionate about medicine? Well, I guess, okay, so it kind of combines a lot of passions that I have. So like I enjoy science. I enjoy just like the purely cerebral aspect of medicine. And then I also enjoy, like there's a large problem solving aspect to it as well. Um, and then I guess yeah, I mean, then there's the people, right? And that's something we've gotten like a little bit of taste of so far, but one thing that drew me to it, I guess, in undergrad, an experience that drew me to it was I volunteered with a hospice, which was, I think, really eye-opening. So a hospice, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys already know this, but just for like maybe the few guys that don't, hospice is like end of life care. So, and like you're put on hospice care if you have less than 6 months left to live, and it's basically meant to provide you with a comfortable like end of your life. So I was just a volunteer that would visit this elderly man and just kind of, talk to him and read to him. He didn't really have much like verbal skills, but we would, I would talk to him, read to him. We would just like watch TV together or whatever. He had like a full-time live-in like helper. So I would honestly also, a lot of my job was to give the helper company, because he was there by himself with nobody else to keep him company. And so I think through that, it was just like it made an impact on me. That was like around my second year. And that's kind of when I really decided, like, look, like I really enjoy the science stuff, but hey, this is even better, So I wanted to combine my two passions.
Yeah, I'll just share like a really quick story that I had when I was shadowing. I saw like a fetal surgery, where basically the surgeons were operating on twins that had some life-threatening condition, and I remember I was like being in the OR. It was just so cool seeing like the babies' faces on the OR screen, and how just in like a day's work for them, they were able to save their lives, and help them have a normal life. And it was like everything for the mom and her kids and the dad, but like it was just like a day's work for the doctor. And I mean, I think I left that. I was like, wow, that's why I want to go into this field.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Fez and Sophia's point. The biggest thing, honestly, I think, is the interaction with people as people. But me personally, I had a really moving experience. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the 2005 earthquake that happened in Pakistan. And I was in the center of that place where the earthquake took place, and I think about 85,000 people died. And doctors with UNICEF and Doctors Without Borders came into that area, and my uncle was a volunteer as well who would go and help them. And I would join him just to spend some time because I'd get bored at home. And seeing the impact that these doctors made on families who would come in, people with like amputated legs, looking for help, and seeing these doctors help these people in such a vulnerable situation made me think of them as heroes, to be honest. And then at that age, I was like, man, this is what I want to be. This is where I want to be, where like I can help someone while also enjoying what I'm doing, which is learning science and continuously learning something new in life. So yeah, the interaction with people and the opportunity to touch and help people's lives.
Yeah, I'd say my passion, or what keeps me going, is very close to Umar's, where I love the Muslim community. I mean, like, one of the things that affects me the most is thinking about how the like many countries, but how, like, I'm Algerian, and how a lot of Muslim countries have been affected by colonialism, have been, don't have the resources. You have massive amounts of people that don't, like, their biggest problem is something insignificant here because they don't have access to good healthcare. And like, my number one goal in my life is to help the Ummah. And to me, this is the most straightforward way for me to go about doing that, to make an impact myself. And like I said in the beginning, like, my goal is to move abroad and work abroad. So that is, like, if there was a way that I could be more impactful and know that I could reach people and change people's lives, I would do it. Like, I'm not that tied to being a doctor. Like, I'm more tied to wanting to help the Ummah, if that makes sense. But from what I've seen and from my past experience and like living in Algeria, to me that seems like the most straightforward way, and also enjoyable and personally rewarding. Because as you will see, we haven't even started our rotations, but we've been thinking about them, and we've been to the hospital, and we've been interacting with like fake patients, and that there is a sense of achievement of knowing that you've helped better another human being's life in like when they're scared and when they're vulnerable. And so it's personally fulfilling.
I actually have to go, but I can send my email in the chat if anybody needs it. Here, let me do that right now.
So you will know that we can block off your time.
I can't. I have so much work to do right now. Yeah, no, I just have so much like work to catch up on for tomorrow, but it's been really nice, and definitely reach out to me if you guys need anything. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.
I'll put down my email as well. If you guys have any questions, you're more than welcome to email.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you guys are juniors right now, applying right now to the current cycle, they're actually going to be providing sort of more specific, individualized advising, and you guys can access that form on Facebook, on the Facebook event page. But yeah, if you guys have any more like specific questions about your application, anything you may want to ask that you didn't get to ask today, you can definitely sign up for that. But that's only available for students who are applying right now. If you're not, you can definitely email them and reach out anytime. But if we don't have any more questions, I think we can start to wrap up just so we can give people time, to eat iftar, get prepared for iftar. I know like you guys are probably really tired right now. But yeah, thank you guys so much for, being here, giving us your time, especially when you're so busy as med students. We really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, thank you for setting this up. Really enjoyed this, and more than welcome to do it again in the future. More than happy to do it again in the future. But yeah, thanks.
I concur.
Yeah, same. It's nice to know something once in a while, right, guys?
Yeah. Also, I was gonna say the emails are gonna disappear as soon as the meeting ends. So if anyone wants to take a picture of the emails before we end the meeting.
And before we leave, I just want to all the pre-meds who are applying this cycle and will be applying in the future, I just want to let you guys know that when I was on the other side, I understand the stress, the uncertainty you feel, but try to do something that takes that stress off. Inshallah, you'll get to where you want to be, and just do your best, do the things that are in your control, and don't focus on things that are not in your control or uncertain, and don't be thinking about all those what if questions. Just do your best, put your trust in Allah, and inshallah you'll get to where you want to be.
Inshallah, yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. All right, well, if we don't have any more questions, we can inshallah wrap things up. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.